There are plenty of reasons for Alabama fans to panic about the Crimson Tide's uneven performance in a close call at Texas Saturday afternoon. Alabama looked vincible and vulnerable against the Steve Sarkisian-led Texas team that outschemed and outplayed the Tide for most of the game. We'll get to all the big questions Alabama must answer, particularly on the offensive end, if it is going to meet preseason national championship or bust expectations. But in a chaos-filled day that rocked college football, Alabama deserves credit for simply finding a way to survive and escape DKR Texas Memorial Stadium with a win. Top 10 teams Notre Dame and Texas A&M can't say the same after disappointing performances. It's what so much of the 14 college football playoff era is about. No two-loss team has ever made the current iteration of the CFP, which makes the margin of error for every team razor-thin. After losing to Ohio State and Marshall to open the season, Notre Dame is out of the playoff race despite starting the season as the no. Texas A&M's chances of making the playoff now feel infinitesimal after losing to Appalachian State given the arduous schedule ahead. Alabama is still very much in the hunt even if its on-field play hasn't matched the lofty expectations that come with being the preseason no. There was a lot to like about this Alabama team coming into the 2022 season, and it started with stars Bryce Young and Will Anderson. When you have perhaps the nation's top two players as your leaders, you are in a great position. Even Alabama head coach Nick Saban raved about the player leadership before the season started, signaling to insiders that he really liked this team. But as good as Young and Anderson are, and they are both very good, a football team is more than two players. As the returning Heisman Trophy winner, Young is Alabama's most valuable player and again emerged as the hero late against Texas. Even when Young struggles, he almost always makes the big play when he needs to, and Saturday was no different. Still, Alabama's offensive struggles prompt real concern moving forward. Texas called a great defensive game plan, but the Tide wide receivers' collective inability to get separation and open is worrisome, to say the least. Alabama has been so spoiled over the last decade's run of receivers, from Julio Jones to Amari Cooper to Calvin Ridley to DeVonta Smith. You just expect Alabama to have a game-changing receiver that it can turn to when other things aren't working offensively. Last season, Jameson Williams and John Metchie were those security blankets for Young. Who that person is this season is very much up in the air. Young clearly likes tight end Cameron Latu and running back Jahmyr Gibbs, but hasn't found a consistent receiver to target downfield to open up the offense. Louisville transfer Tyler Harrell could be that guy when healthy, and maybe JoJo Earle provides a spark when he comes back, but there doesn't look like one in the rotation right now. That won't be a problem against Louisiana Monroe and Vanderbilt the next 2 weeks, but to beat well-coached teams like Arkansas and Georgia, Alabama is going to need a lot more from the receiver position. It needs a lot more from its offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien, too, whose play calling paled in comparison to the creativity and rhythm Sarkisian deployed for the Longhorns. Sark reminded Tide fans of how fortunate they were to have him guiding the offense during Alabama's historic 2020 season, cementing himself as the best offensive coordinator Saban has had in Tuscaloosa. It's not just about the receivers, though, even if that might be the biggest problem right now. The overall sloppiness and carelessness throughout the game has to be disturbing to Saban and the rest of the coaching staff. Anderson had an uncharacteristically undisciplined day with 3 penalties, which included 2 early offsides infractions. The Tide combined for 15 penalties, the most in the Saban era in Tuscaloosa, and looked as bad as it did in last year's ugly Iron Bowl win against Auburn. You can bank on Saban making it a major point of emphasis in practice this upcoming week. Alabama walked out of a raucous football environment with a win. Even more important, though, will be if it can leave Texas with remedies to concerns that arose in the sweltering Austin heat. Related, Steve Sarkisian, we didn't lose today Goodman. A rivalry is born deep in the heart of Texas. Alabama's offense was lost in the woods. Then Bryce Young took over the Aggies again. Look, overrated. One of my biggest life philosophies is I don't want to yuck anyone else's yum. I might not think investing more than $9 million a year on a coach to guide a program that loses to Appalachian State at home is a good idea, but it's not my money. Same with any and all money doled out in nil payments. If it makes you happy and you don't really care about a return on your investment, go for it. But I am curious if some of those well-heeled boosters bankrolling the Texas A&M football program start demanding better results than what they are getting right now. 6 Aggies again look like an overrated, underachieving team after losing to Appalachian State at home on Saturday. After App State gave up 63 points to North Carolina a week earlier, A&M managed only 14 points and 186 offensive yards. For a coach with an offensive guru reputation, it sure seems like Fisher's A&M teams are rarely particularly proficient offensively. Outside of a stellar Kellen Mond campaign during the pandemic-impacted 2020 season, Fisher hasn't seemed able to figure out the quarterback position while in College Station. Fisher picked Haynes King over LSU transfer Max Johnson, but conceded after the App State loss that everything will be evaluated moving forward. The good news or the bad news, depending on if you're an optimist or a realist, is Texas A&M's remaining schedule features plenty of opportunities to quiet critics. Over the next 4 weeks, Texas A&M plays No. 16 Arkansas, at Mississippi State, and at No. For a team that was a popular preseason pick as the second-best SEC West team, anything worse than 2-2 over that stretch is a disaster. And even if Texas A&M manages that, ITLL still face challenging games against No. 12 Florida, 22 Ole Miss, and LSU. It could easily turn into a 4 or 5 loss season for the Aggies if Fisher doesn't turn things around fast. Will that change how the fan base feels about Fisher? To this point, fans have seemed to enjoy rallying around him. One recruiting class in this most recent cycle. His public war of words with Saban this offseason seemed to endear him to fans who liked that he stuck up for his players. But fan admiration for Fisher belies the fact the results haven't been impressive. As CBS Sports' Barrett Sallee pointed out on Twitter, Fisher actually has a worse record in his first 50 games, 35-15, than his predecessor Kevin Sumlin, 36-14. A&M would owe Fisher more than $90 million if it fired him this season, so he isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Even in the absurd world of boosters paying for huge buyouts, Fisher has plenty of job security. But the 2022 season does have the potential to shift fan perception around the Texas A&M head coach, and losses to Appalachian State aren't exactly going to improve support. Most pumped fan base, Appalachian State, the pure joy and emotion on Appalachian State coach Sean Clark's face after beating Texas A&M is what college football is all about. A week after coming very close to knocking off North Carolina, App State pulled off an even bigger upset on the road against the No. It marked a huge day for the Sun Belt with Marshall defeating No. 8 Notre Dame and Georgia Southern putting what could be the finishing touch on the Scott Frost era with a win over Nebraska, 2. Most panicked fan base, Notre Dame, the good vibes were percolating this offseason. Marcus Freeman was a whole lot cooler and more likable than Brian Kelly, not exactly the highest bar to hurdle, to be honest, and it seemed to power the hype around what Notre Dame could accomplish this season. Instead, the Fighting Irish is 0-2 games into the season after losing to unranked Marshall at home on Saturday. Freeman should recruit well at Notre Dame, but Kelly largely avoided losses like that while at Notre Dame, and the mishap is a reminder there is risk in promoting a first-time head coach into as prominent a role as this one. 1. Penn State at Auburn, 2:30 p.m. CT, a really important game for both programs, but could be critically important for Brian Harsin ahead of SEC play. Auburn could really use a good non-conference win like this at home. 2. Miami at Texas A&M, 8 p.m. CT. The Aggies get the pleasure of playing undefeated Miami after losing to App State. A 1-2 start before SEC play would not be great for A&M, to put it mildly. 3. Mississippi State at LSU, 5 p.m. CT. I have no expectations for this one beyond ITLL probably get weird. 4. Georgia at South Carolina, 11 a.m. CT. South Carolina is feisty, but Georgia looks like a juggernaut so far. 5. Ole Miss at Georgia Tech, 2:30 p.m. CT. If the Rebels can keep winning, they could get a top 15 showdown against Kentucky in Week 5. John Talty is the sports editor and SEC insider at Alabama Media Group. He is the best-selling author of The Leadership Secrets of Nick Saban, How Alabama's Coach Became the Greatest Ever.